There was a moment in my life when everything shifted, not because I worked harder or got lucky, but because I finally understood something most people ignore. That moment was quiet, internal. But from it, a new version of me was born, one that no longer chased success. I attracted it. If you're ready, I'll share with you exactly what I realized that day. You see, success is not something you chase. It's something you become. And on that day, I stopped running after money, power, and recognition. Instead, I turned inward and asked, who do I need to become so that success comes to me naturally? That question became my compass, and the answer revealed the truth. Success begins in the mind. For years, I believed the rich had some secret advantage, but the real advantage was their mindset. They acted with confidence before they had results. They walked like winners, even when losing. And I understood they weren't faking it. They were aligning their thoughts with their future. That's when everything changed. So I started thinking like that too. From that moment forward, I made a decision to hold the vision of my success so vividly in my mind that no circumstance could shake it. I saw myself already wealthy, already powerful, already calm under pressure. Every morning I repeated it to myself. Every day I made choices as if I were already that man. That's how I became him. Discipline became my daily companion, not because I enjoyed it, but because I knew every action aligned with my mental image. You become what you think about, and if you keep thinking like a poor man, you'll act like one. I stopped feeding thoughts of limitation. I replaced them with images of power, wealth, and contribution. That's when results followed. People asked me, "What's your secret?" I would smile because it's not a secret. It's a formula that's been in front of us the whole time. Thoughts become things. Every empire starts as a vision. Every fortune begins as a burning desire. But most people never decide what they want. I did. I claimed it in my mind, and then my actions followed. That's what most people get wrong. They wait for proof before they commit. But I learned, commitment comes first, then evidence follows. I started acting as if my success was inevitable. I stopped asking, "What if it doesn't work?" and asked, "What would I do if I knew it would?" That changed everything. I became bold, focused, and unshakable. If this is landing with you, leave a comment right now. I choose to think like the wealthy. This isn't just about money, it's about identity. Who are you becoming with your thoughts today? Type it, claim it. The moment you decide, truly decide, you'll feel the shift begin, just like I did. Most people misunderstand faith. They think it's a passive belief, but I learned that faith is action taken without evidence. It's when you move forward before the reward appears. That kind of faith isn't religious, it's strategic. It trains the mind to expect results, and expectation is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. I began feeding my mind daily with the image of the man I intended to become, not once a week, not when I felt inspired, but every single day, morning and night. I wrote it, I spoke it, I lived it internally before it existed externally. And slowly, the world began to mirror what I believed. I didn't just think rich, I became rich. When I shifted my thoughts, I started attracting better people, better opportunities, better ideas. Why? Because I was no longer thinking from lack. I was thinking from abundance, from vision. And life always reflects the internal. That's what I realized. Your results are just a mirror. Change the source and the reflection changes too. I stopped reacting to life and started designing it. I wasn't controlled by conditions anymore. I became the cause, not the effect. That was the most powerful realization I ever had. If I think like a creator, I become one. If I think like a victim, I remain one. The mind is either your prison or your passport. You choose. From that day forward, I treated my thoughts like currency. I invested in what I wanted and refused to spend energy on what I feared. Worry is just misused imagination, and I had no time for fear. I chose to imagine power, purpose, and peace. Because where the mind leads, the body and the future will follow. I kept asking myself, what does the wealthy version of me do today? Then I did it, even if it was uncomfortable, even if no one noticed. I knew every choice was casting a vote for who I'd become. That's how I built self-respect, not from talking, from acting like the future version of me, until I became him. Discipline wasn't a chore, it was alignment. I followed through not because I had to, but because I chose to. I chose consistency over chaos. I chose delayed gratification over cheap pleasure. And those choices compounded, not just in my bank account, but in my mindset, my habits, my life. Now comment this to anchor your new identity. I no longer chase, I align, because the version of you you're becoming doesn't wait for proof. He creates it. She doesn't hope, she builds. Write it below. Let it be your declaration to yourself, and then act like it's already yours. Once I understood that wealth begins in thought, I stopped blaming. I stopped waiting. I took full responsibility for every result in my life. Not from guilt, but from power. Because when it's your fault, it's also your opportunity. And that shift, from excuse to ownership, is where all transformation begins. You can't think like the average and live like the exceptional. That's the truth I accepted. So I stopped consuming what the average mind consumed. I stopped entertaining average distractions, and I committed to feeding my mind what inspired, educated, and aligned with the future I wanted to build. I realized wealth is not just about what you earn. It's about what you believe you're worth. The mind sets the limit long before the world does. That's why I worked on belief more than I worked on income. And when the belief expanded, the income followed naturally, because I had grown into someone who could receive it. Your outer world is always catching up to your inner standard, so raise your internal bar. Stop waiting for success to validate you. Validate yourself through action. That's what I did. I stopped hoping and started deciding. And when you decide with full conviction, life begins to respond differently. Nothing external changed first. My environment stayed the same. My responsibilities stayed the same. But I changed. I changed how I responded, how I thought, how I walked. And soon the world had no choice but to adjust, because the universe matches energy. And I was finally radiating certainty. Most people spend years searching for the secret. They try strategy after strategy, but few ever stop to examine the foundation, their mindset. The secret I discovered? Strategy doesn't work without identity. Who you believe you are is stronger than any tactic. That's why belief comes first. Once I began living with intention, I felt lighter, clearer, more powerful. I didn't need external motivation anymore. I had internal momentum. I didn't need a perfect plan. I had clarity of direction. That clarity came from deciding who I was and backing it up with discipline. Now comment this to solidify your shift. My mindset is wealth, because it is. Your thoughts are your first fortune. Guard them, shape them, build them daily. Type it below and make it real. Because once you own the truth in your mind, the world has no choice but to mirror it. I stopped trying to control outcomes. Instead, I focused on controlling my inputs, my attitude, my attention, my alignment. That was the moment I took my power back. Because when your focus is internal, external chaos loses its grip. Peace is no longer a reward. It becomes your default setting. Everything I needed to succeed was already within me, but I had buried it beneath doubt, noise, and the opinions of others. When I removed the clutter, I heard my own voice again. And that voice said, "You were never unworthy. You were just unfocused." That day, I became the architect of my future. It's not about being perfect. It's about being precise. I wasn't flawless in my journey, but I was intentional. I kept aiming. I kept refining. I became a master of small steps. And it was those small, aligned steps that built momentum. Momentum doesn't come from motivation, it comes from movement. Most people wait for the world to clap before they commit, but I clapped for myself, in silence, in struggle, in the middle of the unknown, because I knew if I couldn't believe in me when no one else did, I'd never make it when the spotlight came. Confidence is built in private, long before the stage. I trained my mind like a muscle. I didn't let it wander into fear. I redirected it again and again toward the vision. That repetition rewired my beliefs. The more I imagined success, the more natural it felt. And when it felt normal in my mind, it began appearing in my life. I used to think success was about doing more, but the truth, it's about doing what matters repeatedly. I simplified everything. I stripped away distractions. I got clear on the 3 actions that would change my life, and I did them every day. Wealth loves focus, and discipline is focus in motion. You don't rise because you're lucky. You rise because you're aligned. And alignment isn't something you stumble into, it's something you build. I built it with habits, with morning declarations, with vision, with faith. And once I became aligned, the results began chasing me. Now comment this to commit out loud. I am aligned with the life I'm building. Write it, believe it, speak it. This isn't just a phrase, it's a decision to stop doubting and start becoming. Because the moment you align, the world starts to rearrange in your favor. You don't need a new goal, you need a new identity. When I understood that, I stopped setting goals I wasn't mentally aligned with. I started with belief, then added structure. The goal wasn't to force results. It was to become the version of myself who naturally attracts them. People think success is noisy, but the real work, it's silent. It's in the mornings when no one's watching. It's in the choices you make when no one's clapping. The wealthy don't just perform, they prepare. And preparation, done in private, builds unshakable confidence in public. There's nothing wrong with fear. What matters is what you do with it. I stopped trying to eliminate fear, and I learned to walk through it. I acted in spite of it, and each time I did, fear grew smaller. Discipline crushed doubt. Movement replaced hesitation. I no longer needed validation to move. I became my own evidence. I looked at my habits, my thoughts, my consistency, and I knew I was becoming someone worthy of wealth. When you can see yourself clearly, you don't need permission. You give yourself the green light. I made peace with repetition. I stopped chasing variety and started chasing mastery. Most people quit because it feels boring. But boredom is where breakthroughs live. Do something long enough with focus and the world will call you talented. But it was just discipline. Every time I wanted to quit, I asked, what would the future me do right now? And that question saved me, because when you act from your future identity, you stop breaking promises. You stop delaying. You start living like the outcome is already yours, and that changes everything. I gave up the illusion of balance. Not everything would feel equal. Some days required more. Some seasons demanded everything, but I chose alignment over balance. And when you're aligned, you don't burn out, you break through. Now comment this to lock in your direction. I lead with vision, not emotion. Because your feelings change, your vision shouldn't. When you live from your vision, your emotions become tools, not obstacles. Say it below. Let it guide how you show up tomorrow morning. I stopped focusing on how far I had to go and started focusing on how far I'd come. Gratitude became fuel, not the passive kind, but the kind that reminds you you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from strength. That mindset keeps you grounded and moving forward at the same time. I didn't wait to feel ready. I moved anyway, I showed up anyway. That's when I realized readiness isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And when you decide you're ready, the world opens. The door doesn't swing first, you knock first, and then you keep knocking until it breaks open. I stopped multitasking success. I started treating it like a priority, not an option. My attention became sacred. My schedule became structured. My actions became intentional. Because scattered effort brings scattered results. Focused energy builds empires. Discipline taught me to think long-term. I no longer lived for the moment. I lived for the mission. I asked myself, will this matter in 5 years? That question killed my distractions. And when the distractions died, clarity was born. And clarity, that's where speed lives. I started acting like someone who already had the result. I didn't need the money yet. I needed the behavior. I didn't need the applause. I needed the alignment. I became the type of person who was ready for success before it arrived. That's how it arrived. I realized that success doesn't respond to who you were. It responds to who you are becoming. So I let go of past mistakes. I forgave the old version of me. I honored him for surviving, but I outgrew him to thrive. Growth means releasing who you were to embrace who you must be. It was never about doing everything. It was about doing the right thing every day. I became ruthless with my energy. I filtered out noise, ignored opinions, and followed purpose. You don't need more time. You need fewer distractions. Discipline creates time. Now comment this to cement your identity. I act from my future, not my fear. Because your fear wants comfort, but your future wants consistency. And when you act from that future, everything around you begins to shift. Don't wait. Step into it now. I stopped worshipping results and started respecting repetition, because the truth is, results are just reflections of repeated behavior. It's not about what you do once, it's about what you honor daily. When I embraced the boring, I became dangerous. And soon, the world started to respond. Every time I felt resistance, I knew I was close to growth. That's what no one tells you. Resistance isn't the end, it's the indicator. It means you're on the edge of something new. So I stopped running from it. I leaned in, and I turned that tension into transformation. I became less reactive. Life still threw storms, but I had built an internal structure. Discipline wasn't rigid, it was freeing. Because once you know how to lead yourself, nothing outside of you can control your direction. That's how I became unshakable. I stopped asking, am I doing this right? And started asking, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? That's the better question. Because success is personal. It's not about copying, it's about committing. Committing to your path, even when it's quiet, even when it's lonely. The world loves to celebrate intensity. But I learned that consistency is what builds wealth. Intensity burns fast, consistency compounds. I wasn't the loudest in the room, but I was the last to leave. And that's why I outgrew the ones who started with more. Every morning I reminded myself who I was becoming. I didn't let the noise of the day override the vision. I protected it with silence, with structure, with repetition. And soon I didn't need reminders. I became the living proof of what was once just an idea. I didn't feel like showing up every day, but I did. Because I wasn't acting from how I felt. I was acting from who I decided to be. That's real power. When your identity is strong enough, it overrides your mood. And moods don't build legacies. Discipline does. Now comment this to anchor the habit. My consistency is louder than my excuses. Let this be your new normal. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to repeat what works until it rewires how you think, live, and lead. Success didn't come when I worked harder, it came when I worked clearer. Discipline gave me clarity, and clarity gave me control. You can't dominate a world you don't understand. And the first world to master isn't external, it's internal. That's where the real wealth is built. I stopped trying to fit in. I didn't need to be understood, I needed to be effective. And effectiveness requires intention, not approval. I started designing my days for results, not validation, because applause feels good, but results feel better. I realized something powerful. The moment I broke the pattern of excuse, everything shifted. One small decision, done consistently, has the power to change your trajectory. Not overnight, but inevitably. Discipline isn't just practice, it's pattern interruption. I began choosing discomfort on purpose. Not recklessly, but strategically. Growth lives there, and every time I leaned into challenge, I became more resilient. Fear stopped being a warning. It became a signal. You're growing. That changed how I saw every obstacle. I gave up balance for progress, because in real life, balance is a myth. What I wanted was momentum, and that meant giving full focus to the season I was in. Some days demanded everything, but those were the days that built everything. I no longer chased motivation. I built systems. My future wasn't relying on how I felt. It was relying on what I repeated, and what I repeated built rhythm. And that rhythm built identity. It's not magic, it's mechanics, repeated daily. I made peace with repetition. Greatness doesn't come from excitement, it comes from rhythm, from habits done long after they stop being fun. I mastered boredom. And once you do that, the rest of the world starts calling you lucky. Now comment this. I'm mastering my rhythm, not chasing motivation. Let that be your foundation, because emotion will lie to you, but discipline will guide you. And once you follow that rhythm long enough, everything changes. I used to crave breakthroughs, but then I realized breakthroughs are just the reward for consistent behavior. You don't need a miracle, you need a method. And when I stuck to the method long enough, the miracle always showed up. Not suddenly, but inevitably. You want change? Start with structure, not with hype. I created a system I could trust, and when my emotions failed me, my system carried me. That's how the wealthy live. They don't rely on moods. They rely on mechanisms. Discipline is the structure that doesn't break. I learned that wealth doesn't start in your bank account. It starts in your habits, in your thoughts, in your tolerance for mediocrity. So I raised my standards, quietly, daily, until my environment caught up with the new level I was living from. You don't rise because you're lucky. You rise because you're consistent. Every single successful person I've met had one thing in common. They showed up on the days they didn't want to. That's the edge. Not talent, not timing, just tenacity. Discipline taught me to trust myself. Every time I followed through, I proved to my mind that I could be counted on. That kind of self-trust is rare. It's quiet, but it changes everything. Because once you believe your own word, nothing outside of you can stop you. I stopped giving energy to distractions. I cut off the noise. I simplified everything. When you remove what doesn't matter, what does matter becomes powerful. That's when momentum starts, not when you do more, when you remove what drains you. I didn't wait for opportunity. I created the conditions for it to find me. That's the shift most never make. They wait, hope, postpone. But I decided every day I'd build the foundation that success would one day stand on. And it did. Now comment this to claim it. I move with clarity and consistency, because this is no longer about feeling ready. It's about being structured enough to rise when the moment calls. And that moment, it's already here. You're not waiting anymore, you're building. I looked around one day and realized nothing outside of me had changed. But inside, everything had. I walked differently, spoke differently, chose differently. Because once your identity shifts, your entire life starts to adjust around it. The world moves in response to who you believe you are. I stopped being available to the old version of me, the one who procrastinated, the one who doubted, the one who delayed. I let him go. Not because he was bad, but because he had finished his job. He got me here, but he couldn't take me where I was going. That's the secret most people never learn. You have to outgrow your old self, even if that self was surviving, because surviving isn't living, and comfort isn't purpose. I didn't want safety, I wanted significance, and that required becoming someone new, So I stopped negotiating with weakness. I stopped debating with doubt. I decided once and kept deciding. Every morning I chose the path that aligned with my highest self. That path was narrow, but it was worth it. Because the wider path, that one leads to regret. I treated every action like a message to my future. Was I sending alignment or avoidance? Was I moving forward or making excuses? That self-awareness gave me power. Because your results are always answering one question: what did you repeat yesterday? Discipline didn't make me rigid, it made me free. Free from chaos, free from guilt, free from starting over. I didn't fear failure anymore because I had a system that carried me even when I stumbled. And that's the difference between those who rise and those who restart. People ask me now, what changed? And I tell them the truth. Nothing. Until I did. The world stayed the same. But I didn't. And that shift, internal, invisible, uncelebrated, is what changed everything I now have. Now comment this to finish what you started. I am no longer who I was. I am who I choose to be. Say it, write it, believe it. Because transformation doesn't happen by accident. It happens by intention. And you, right now, are becoming someone unstoppable. When I looked at my old patterns, I realized they weren't bad. They were outdated. They were built for survival, not success. So I honored them, then rewrote them. Because if you want a different life, you can't keep using the same blueprint. New outcomes require new patterns. I started measuring success differently, not by numbers, but by alignment. Did I show up like the version of me I'm building? Did I stay focused? Did I keep my word? That became my scoreboard. And when you win those games, the money, peace, and power follow. The mind is your compass, and every time you allow fear, delay, or distraction to steer, you drift. But when you program your thoughts daily with vision, purpose, and gratitude, you lock back onto the path. That's how I stayed the course while others wandered. I stopped being emotionally loyal to limitations. Just because I had a fear yesterday didn't mean I had to carry it today. Just because I doubted before didn't mean I had to stay there. You're allowed to outgrow your own narrative. I did, and I never looked back. Clarity replaced confusion. Commitment replaced chaos. I didn't need more information. I needed more application. I already knew enough to win. I just hadn't honored that knowledge. Once I did, the transformation began. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. I began asking, what does the future version of me need from me today? That question shaped my priorities. It shaped my language. It shaped my standards. And eventually, it shaped my life. Because your future isn't a dream, it's a decision. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to be, between vision and result, between excuses and execution. I walked that bridge, day by day. And when I looked back, I didn't even recognize the old version of me. Now comment this to mark your evolution. My decisions reflect who I'm becoming. Because you're not repeating the past anymore. You're designing the future. One thought, one step, one promise at a time. Say it below. Let it echo. Every day I showed up was a message to the universe. I'm ready. Not for handouts, not for shortcuts, but for growth. And that readiness reshaped how the world responded to me. Because when your energy changes, your results do too. It's never magic. It's alignment. There were no fireworks the day I changed, just a quiet decision, one that I made in the dark, one that I honored in silence. That decision was simple. I won't go back. I burned the bridge to who I was, and every step forward became a step into who I chose to be. I didn't need to have it all figured out. I just needed to move. One right step leads to another. Clarity isn't found while waiting, it's found while walking. I stopped obsessing over the how. I focused on the who, and when the who is solid, the how reveals itself. Growth will cost you comfort. That's the trade, and I paid it, gladly. I said no to distractions, no to old patterns, no to the people who didn't see my new identity. Not out of anger, but out of alignment, because not everyone can come with you. And that's okay. I didn't chase goals. I embodied them. I didn't just write affirmations. I lived them, not perfectly, not loudly, but consistently. I let go of needing to feel ready and started living like I already had what I wanted. And soon, I did. Discipline made me undeniable. It removed the need for external validation. I didn't need applause. My rhythm was enough. My identity was enough. And when I reached that place, wealth stopped being a destination and started being a reflection. I became immune to failure, not because it stopped showing up, but because I stopped giving it meaning. A bad day wasn't a bad direction, it was feedback. I learned, I adjusted, I kept going, and that made me more dangerous than ever before. Now comment this to reinforce your shift. I don't wait for change, I become it. Because that's who you are now, a creator, a designer, a leader. And every time you move from that place, consistently, you pull your future closer, step by step. I no longer feared the unknown. I welcomed it, because I knew who I was bringing into it, a version of me built through fire, silence, and repetition. That kind of person doesn't need guarantees. He trusts himself. And self-trust is the foundation of all lasting success. I stopped rushing the process. I embraced the pace, because the deeper the root, the stronger the rise. And I wasn't building a moment, I was building a legacy. Legacies are never rushed. They're built quietly, with structure, through decades of invisible discipline. Every result I have now came from a simple understanding. I don't have to be perfect, I just have to be persistent. It's not the best who win, it's the ones who refuse to stop. I chose to be that person, steady, present, non-negotiable with my vision. And when others fell off, I stayed planted. When others got distracted, I doubled down, because I wasn't looking for excitement, I was looking for alignment. Excitement fades, but alignment compounds. That's how you win in silence and rise in public. I let go of timelines. I stopped demanding fast progress and started demanding deep commitment, because what you build fast often breaks, but what you build strong becomes unshakable. I wasn't chasing a quick win. I was building something worth keeping. You don't get wealthy by accident. You get wealthy by design. And design requires thought, vision, and repetition. I built that day by day, thought by thought. I wasn't lucky. I was structured. I wasn't special. I was focused. My life now is the product of decisions made in silence, when no one was watching, when quitting felt easier, when distractions were louder than discipline. But I stayed. That's what changed everything. Not talent, not timing, just staying. Now comment this if you're still here. I finish what I start, because you didn't come this far to turn back. You've shifted, you've grown, you've become. And now all that's left is to keep walking with intention until your vision becomes reality. I made peace with the process. I didn't need instant proof anymore. My commitment became my confidence. I trusted the system I built. I trusted the path I chose. And that trust made me calm. Calm in chaos, calm in doubt, because I wasn't reacting. I was building. I stopped needing a new path. I just needed to walk the one I was on with full focus. That was the shift. Most people quit, not because the plan doesn't work, but because they stop working the plan. So I stayed, and the plan started working. Your future self is watching. Every thought, every step, every time you show up. And he's not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be consistent, because consistency is the currency of transformation. And I chose to pay that price daily. I stopped waiting for motivation to find me. I became the source. The more I moved, the more momentum I created. And the more momentum I created, the less I needed inspiration. I wasn't chasing energy. I was generating it. What I learned is this: Success is not an event. It's not a day. It's not a launch. It's not a breakthrough. It's a rhythm, a repetition of small acts done with big intention. The bigger the vision, the more humble the steps. I honored them all. People will call it discipline. But for me, it became devotion. I was devoted to who I was becoming, devoted to the mission, to the message, to the mindset. And that devotion made me powerful, not loud, just unbreakable. Every step I took created a new standard. And those standards replaced my excuses. My habits replaced my doubt. My silence replaced the need for validation. And that identity? It didn't happen overnight. It happened every morning. Now comment this if you feel the shift inside. My identity is built by discipline. You've seen it, you've felt it, and now you live it. Say it below, not just as a phrase, but as a decision, because from this moment on, you act like it's already yours. I stopped asking for life to get easier. I asked to become stronger, and I did. Not by force, but by focus, not through noise, but through clarity. The more I grew, the less I needed, because fulfillment doesn't come from more, it comes from alignment. Every great change begins with a quiet decision. No audience, no permission, just you choosing to think differently, walk differently, live differently. That's how it starts. And if you're still here, it means you've already begun that process. I no longer measured myself by how far I had to go. I measured myself by how faithfully I showed up today. And when you keep stacking days like that, aligned, intentional, disciplined, you wake up one day in a life you once only imagined. You're not behind, you're not late. You're exactly where your decisions have brought you, and that's good news, because new decisions create new destinations. And you, right now, have everything it takes to walk toward a new one. I didn't wait to become powerful. I decided I already was. That decision changed how I spoke, how I acted, how I lived. And the world, it responded accordingly. Because when your self-image upgrades, your results follow without apology. Now comment this if you're ready to close this chapter in power. Everything changed because I did. Say it, own it, live it. This is more than a video. It's your permission to shift, to evolve, to build, and most of all, to stay consistent long enough to see it. You've heard my story, but now it's your turn. Not to listen, but to move. Not to wait, but to walk. You already have the mindset. Now build the motion every day, especially the hard ones, because that's where breakthroughs are born. And remember this, you don't rise by chance, you rise by choice. I made mine, you've just made yours. Now go live like it's already done, because once you truly understand this, everything changes.